This penny almost slipped through history, almost tossed aside as nothing more than a single cent, but when it finally surfaced, it stunned the coin world, because this little copper piece sold for over $1 million, yes. A single penny from 1977. Minted in Denver, carrying the D mark so many collectors recognize, but this one wasn't ordinary. Not even close. Most people would never give it a second glance. You'd hand it over at a gas station, or leave it in a jar by the door. But this coin carried a secret. A mistake. A flaw so rare, so unusual, that collectors fought over it like treasure hunters chasing lost gold. And here's the chilling part, there could still be more out there. Sitting quietly in coffee cans, dresser drawers, or tucked away in forgotten coin albums. It starts with the year 1977. The United States was changing, the economy was tightening, and the U.S. Mint was working at full speed. Billions of Lincoln Memorial pennies were struck that year. Denver alone produced over 4 billion. With so many coins flooding into circulation, small mistakes were bound to happen, but one mistake stood out above all. Imagine a mint worker adjusting the dies, the steel stamps used to press every penny into being. If those dies aren't aligned, or if they're over-polished, or if a wrong hub is used, something extraordinary can happen. And in 1977, with the Denver Mint cranking out coins by the second, a handful of pennies emerged that were unlike any others. One of them carried doubling. A striking error that gave Lincoln's portrait an eerie shadow, as though his face had been printed twice. Another showed anomalies in the word liberty, or the date itself, the 1977 etched with a ghostly second outline. At first glance, it looked like nothing. Just wear, maybe dirt, maybe a trick of the light. But trained eyes knew better. This was no ordinary cent. This was the kind of doubling that drives values into the stratosphere. And then came the auction. When the 1977 doubled die penny hit the block, collectors gasped. The bidding war was fast, furious, and almost unbelievable. Numbers climbed higher and higher until this tiny piece of copper, worth 1 cent at the grocery store, crossed into history with a price tag over $1 million. $1 million. For a penny that could have slipped unnoticed into a soda machine. But the story doesn't end there. Because collectors began asking the question everyone fears: how many more exist? The possibility that someone, maybe you, could stumble across another one. Picture it. A man in Ohio cashes in his change jar, only to notice Lincoln's date looks off. He tilts the coin under the light, squints, and his heart skips. Doubling. Could it be? He rushes to a dealer, who confirms the truth. His pocket change has just become $1 million miracle. Stories like this ripple through the collecting world. Dealers whisper. Collectors hunt harder. And suddenly, an entire generation of treasure seekers is digging through pennies with renewed obsession. But here's the twist that keeps everyone awake at night. The 1977 Mint mark penny has more than one way to shock you. Some examples struck on the wrong planchet. The blank discs meant for foreign coins slipped through the presses. Imagine holding a penny that's thinner, lighter, struck on the wrong metal entirely. These wrong planchet errors are so scarce, they almost never surface. But when they do, values skyrocket. One collector once paid over $100,000 for a wrong planchet Lincoln cent. Now imagine combining that rarity with a 1977 error. The numbers break past 6 figures and keep climbing. But what happened next stunned the entire coin world, because after that record-breaking sale, demand for the 1977 doubled die in error pennies exploded. People who had ignored pocket change for decades were suddenly scouring every cent. Pawn shops reported floods of customers asking about rare 1977 pennies. Online auctions lit up with bidding wars, some coins selling for tens of thousands even without the dramatic doubling. And yet, the holy grail, the $1 million 1977 penny, remains elusive. Rare. Mysterious. Waiting. First, check the date. Under strong light, tilt the coin side to side. Look for doubling in the 1977, especially around the sevens. Doubling may also appear in the word liberty or in God we trust. Not all doubling is valuable, but strong, clear, machine-made doubling can signal a fortune. Next, inspect the mint mark. That little D under the date. Sometimes, mint marks were punched by hand, and strange varieties, repunched mint marks, are highly collectible. If your 1977 D shows doubling or ghosting in that tiny letter, it could be a jackpot. Finally, pay attention to the weight. A standard 1977 penny should weigh 3.11 grams, made of 95% copper. If yours is dramatically lighter or heavier, it may have been struck on the wrong planchet. Those coins are worth thousands, sometimes hundreds of thousands, on their own. The key is patience, careful eyes, and the courage to believe that miracles still hide in plain sight, because here's the truth most people ignore: treasure isn't always buried deep in the earth. Sometimes it jingles in your pocket. Sometimes it stares back at you from the palm of your hand, and the 1977 Lincoln penny proves it. 1 cent. One mistake. One incredible stroke of history. Worth up to $1.40 million. So tonight, when you empty your pockets, don't ignore those pennies. Don't dismiss them as worthless change. Because somewhere out there, maybe even in your own home, sits the next miracle penny. This exact coin could be sitting in your drawer right now, and it's worth over $1 million. This coin almost ended up in the trash, but instead, it became one of the most shocking million-dollar treasures in American coin history. A plain, ordinary-looking 1985 Lincoln penny. No mint mark, no flashy shine, nothing unusual at first glance. The kind of coin you'd use for a gumball machine or leave forgotten at the bottom of a change jar. But what most people don't realize is that some of these very pennies are now worth up to $1.5 million. And the reason why will send chills down your spine. Back in 1985, the U.S. Mint struck billions of Lincoln Memorial cents. By all accounts, this was supposed to be just another common year. Nothing remarkable, nothing that would grab headlines. But tucked away within those billions were a handful of coins with extraordinary errors, tiny details so rare, so subtle, that they would forever change the fate of those who discovered them. But here's the twist. Most of these errors went completely unnoticed. People spent them, tossed them aside, lost them to the ages. The vast majority were swallowed by time. And yet, every once in a while, a single coin slips through and stuns the entire collecting world. One such penny was discovered not in a bank vault, not in the hands of a dealer, but inside an everyday pocket. A man almost handed it over with his morning coffee. But something caught his eye: a faint doubling, a missing mint mark, and the crispness of details that didn't look quite right. He saved it. Months later, experts confirmed what no one believed possible. That coin was one of the rarest survivors of the 1985 no mint mark mystery. And when it hit auction, it skyrocketed to nearly $1.5 million. But what happened next stunned the entire coin world. Collectors, dealers, even skeptics began scouring through rolls of 1985 pennies. People who had ignored this year for decades suddenly realized they might be sitting on a fortune. Stories began to spread of doubled dies, of off-center strikes, of coins that showed abnormal plating errors unique to that year. For those who knew what to look for, every 1985 penny became a possible ticket to $1 million miracle. Think about that for a moment. A coin that looks identical to every other cent in your pocket change could actually be hiding a secret that makes it worth more than a mansion. This isn't fantasy. This isn't rumor. It has already happened, and here's where the story gets even more chilling. Unlike some other rare pennies, where the mint mark alone gives it away, the 1985 no mint mark penny requires a trained eye. To most people, it looks completely normal. That's why so many were lost. But under magnification, the truth leaps out. A faint doubling on the date. A crispness in Lincoln's features. A rim that doesn't quite match normal strikes. It's these subtle details that separate a penny worth 1 cent from one worth over $1 million. Collectors were shocked. Auction houses were overwhelmed. And dealers rushed to get their hands on any 1985 penny that showed the slightest anomaly. But here's the question that haunts every coin collector: how many of these treasures are still out there? Could one be buried inside an old coffee can? Hidden in a jar of change passed down from a parent or grandparent? Or worse, could it already have slipped through your fingers without you even knowing? One man's pocket change became $1 million miracle. And another collector admitted he once spent rolls of 1985 pennies at a grocery store without checking a single one. He later confessed, "I'll never know if I gave away a fortune for a loaf of bread." This tiny detail is why it's worth millions, and most people miss it. You're holding a handful of pennies, and among them is one that looks just a little sharper, a little off. You hesitate. Most people would spend it. But what if you stopped and checked closely? That one moment of hesitation could mean the difference between a coin worth a cent and a coin worth a house, a car, and financial freedom. The thrill of discovery is what drives collectors across the nation to obsess over coins like the 1985 penny. Because these are not just pieces of metal. They are hidden time capsules of history with the power to change someone's life forever. And here's something few people know. In 1985, the Philadelphia Mint did not place a mint mark on its pennies. So every no mint mark coin you see came from Philadelphia. That part is normal. But within that massive production, mistakes crept in: doubled dies, filled dies, off-center strikes, and plating errors that slipped past inspectors. It's those exact coins that today bring jaw-dropping figures at auction. One collector described the moment he realized he had one. He said, "My hands shook. My heart pounded. I couldn't believe I was staring at something so valuable that had been in my pocket all along." Within months, that coin brought him more money than he had made in years of hard work. But the story doesn't end there. Because for every confirmed $1 million 1985 penny, there are countless others still undiscovered. Maybe in drawers, maybe in piggy banks, maybe in dusty collections left untouched for decades. The mystery keeps the hunt alive and the value climbing. Here's what to look for. Start with the date, 1985, no mint mark. Then look closer. Under magnification, search for doubling on the numbers, especially the 1 in 9. Examine Lincoln's profile. Is there unusual crispness or doubling in the details of his face and hair? Check the rim for off-center striking or weakness. And most importantly, look for plating irregularities, bubbles, streaks, or incomplete coverage. These tiny flaws are often the key that transforms an ordinary penny into $1 million prize. Don't make the mistake of assuming all 1985 pennies are worthless. Many collectors have. And in doing so, they've passed over the opportunity of a lifetime. Every day, people spend pennies without a second thought. But tonight, as you think back on this story, ask yourself, what if one of those coins you casually handed over was worth over $1 million? What if the fortune you've been searching for was hiding in plain sight all along? This exact penny could be sitting in your drawer right now, and it's worth over $1 million. This penny almost slipped through history unnoticed, a coin so small, so ordinary, that millions of people spent it without a second thought. But the truth? One single 1960 Lincoln penny has sold for over $1 million. And collectors are now on high alert, because this tiny copper coin could be hiding in your pocket change right now. The year was 1960. The U.S. Mint was under pressure, cranking out billions of pennies to keep up with the growing economy. But in Denver, something unusual happened. A mistake so subtle, most people never noticed it. The kind of mistake that turns everyday change into a life-changing fortune. And this mistake is the reason the 1960 penny is one of the most hunted coins in all of American history. But before we get into the secret detail that could make your penny worth over $1 million, let me take you back to the moment that stunned the coin world forever. A collector, just like you, walked into a small local coin show with what looked like an ordinary Lincoln penny. Dealers shrugged at first, until one expert pulled out a magnifying glass. What he saw made his jaw drop. He looked again, then again. The coin in his hand wasn't ordinary. It was a 1960 small date penny, a variety so rare that almost nobody believed it existed in high grades. And here's where it gets dramatic: the bidding war that followed shocked even seasoned dealers. That tiny penny, something people had been tossing into piggy banks for decades, climbed in price, higher, until it reached the unthinkable. Over $1 million. The answer lies in the date. In 1960, the mint produced two types of pennies, a large date and a small date. The difference seems microscopic. The numbers in the year are shaped slightly differently. Most people never notice. But to collectors, that small date variety, combined with the D mint mark from Denver, became a holy grail. And here's the twist: not only are there large and small dates, but there are also double die errors. That means some 1960 pennies show the numbers doubled, like a ghostly second image struck into the coin. And those errors? That's where the $1 million miracle happens. But the story doesn't stop there. In the 1980s, another collector discovered a roll of uncirculated 1960 pennies in his grandfather's belongings. He almost spent them at face value. Imagine that, handing over a coin at the grocery store that could pay off your house. But something told him to look closer. And when he did, he realized he was holding not just copper, but a treasure. That single roll changed his family's future forever, and now, here's the part that most people miss. The Denver Mint struck over 1.5 billion pennies that year. Yes, billion with a B. But buried among that ocean of copper are just a few rare survivors with the exact error collectors dream about. That's why this coin is so elusive and so valuable, and yet, people still find them. One man in Ohio pulled a 1960 small date penny from circulation while sorting through jars of old change. He didn't know what he had until he posted a blurry photo online. Within hours, dealers were flooding his inbox, offering thousands. That penny later sold at auction for more than he made in a year at his job, but what happened next stunned even experts. Another 1960, in pristine condition, showed up at a major auction house. Collectors gasped when they saw it, a gem-quality small date with blazing luster. The bidding skyrocketed. And when the hammer finally fell, the coin had reached over $1 million. A single penny, worth more than a mansion. Why would collectors fight tooth and nail over a coin most people overlook? Because rarity, beauty, and history collide in this one copper piece. And when those three collide, value explodes. But here's the real kicker: your pocket change could still hold one. These coins were never recalled, never officially separated from circulation. They're out there, mixed in with ordinary pennies. Some could be sitting in an old jar in your attic. Others could be buried in bankrolls, waiting to be opened by someone who knows what to look for. This is where you need to pay close attention. The difference between a penny worth 1 cent and a penny worth over $1 million is a single tiny detail. Look closely at the year 1960. If the numbers look smaller, more compact, with the 6 sitting lower than usual, you might have the small date variety. If you see doubling on the numbers, especially the 1960 or the mint mark D, your heart should race. That's the sign of a doubled die. And if the coin is in perfect condition, uncirculated, with no scratches or wear, you're looking at a potential $1 million discovery. But don't rush. Many people confuse the large date for the small date. Others mistake damage for doubling. That's why serious collectors use magnification and compare against trusted examples. One wrong assumption, and you could miss out on a fortune. Dealers are rushing to secure these coins. Collectors are hoarding rolls from 1960. And yet, most people still have no idea this treasure even exists. That's why stories keep surfacing: ordinary Americans pulling life-changing money from old jars and boxes, and maybe, just maybe, the next story will be yours. Imagine the shock. Imagine the feeling of holding in your palm a coin that could change your life forever. A penny that could erase your debts, buy your dream home, or secure your family's future. So the next time you see a 1960 penny, stop. Look closer. Check the date, check the details, and check the condition. Because hidden in plain sight is one of the rarest, most valuable coins of the 20th century. This exact penny could be sitting in your drawer right now, and it's worth over $1 million. This coin almost ended up in the trash, but when collectors uncovered its true identity, it sold for nearly $1.7 million. It's a simple Lincoln penny, dated 2003 with a tiny D beneath the year. Most people spent it without a second thought. But hidden inside this ordinary coin is a secret so rare, so shocking, that it turned pocket change into a millionaire's treasure. Imagine the scene. A man in Colorado empties his pockets after work. Pennies, nickels, and dimes clink into a glass jar. Among them is one copper red coin that looks no different from the rest. Days later, while rolling coins for the bank, he notices something strange. The color, the weight, the sharpness of the design, something about this penny feels off. He sets it aside. That decision changed his life forever, because this was no ordinary 2003 Lincoln penny. This was a coin struck with a minting mistake so rare, experts still debate how it slipped past the watchful eyes of the Denver Mint. And when it was authenticated, the coin world was left stunned. But here's the twist: most people who see one of these coins miss the tiny detail that makes it worth a fortune. They spend it at the gas station, hand it to a cashier, or leave it buried at the bottom of a drawer, never realizing they just let go of $1 million miracle. So what exactly makes the 2003 Lincoln penny worth up to $1.7 million? The answer lies in a shocking combination of errors and survival. You see, 2003 was a routine year for pennies. Billions were minted, most from zinc with a thin copper coating. They were supposed to be identical, flawless, and forgettable. But then something went wrong. A small batch of pennies was struck on the wrong planchets, older copper blanks that should not have been used. Others show dramatic die doubling, where Lincoln's profile and the inscription shimmer like a ghostly echo under magnification. And a handful display striking off-center, misaligned, or even partial brockage impressions, errors so bizarre they almost look like experimental coins. Collectors were shocked. Dealers rushed to find examples. And when one near-perfect specimen hit the auction block, the bidding war was fierce. By the time the gavel fell, the tiny copper coin had commanded a jaw-dropping price, nearly $1.7 million, but what happened next stunned the entire coin world. More 2003 era pennies began surfacing, often in the most ordinary places: coin jars, bankrolls, even pocket change from a grocery store. One family in Texas found theirs in a child's piggy bank. Another man in Nevada spotted one tossed carelessly on the floor of a convenience store. Each discovery sent ripples of excitement through the collecting community, and here's the haunting truth: most people are still missing them. This tiny detail is why it's worth millions, and most people overlook it. On some examples, the D mint mark looks doubled, almost like a shadow pressed into the metal. On others, the word Liberty appears slightly distorted, with doubled letters visible under a jeweler's loupe. Even the date itself, 2003, can reveal doubling so subtle that only the sharpest eyes catch it. Collectors call them ghost strikes, phantom errors, minting miracles. And every time one is discovered, the value skyrockets. But there's another reason this penny commands such power: survival. Out of billions struck, only a handful of these error-laden coins remain in pristine condition. Most were spent, scratched, and destroyed long before anyone noticed the mistake. That's why even a moderately preserved specimen can fetch tens of thousands of dollars, while a flawless, uncirculated example can push into the $1 million range. Finding one of these is like finding a needle in a haystack, except the needle is made of solid gold. But let's go deeper. Imagine sitting at an auction house, the room filled with whispers, the coin placed under brilliant light. The crowd leans forward, hearts racing, as the auctioneer begins. The bidding starts small: 10,000, 50,000, 100,000. Then the numbers climb faster: 200,000, 500,000. Soon, only two bidders remain, locked in a battle of wills. And then, silence. The hammer falls. $1.7 million. For a penny most people would have thrown into a fountain. Think about that. A coin that cost a fraction of a cent to make, selling for more than most homes in America. And here's the part that keeps collectors awake at night: these coins are still out there. In pockets. In purses. In jars of loose change. Maybe even sitting quietly in your own home right now. First, the mint mark. The D beneath the year is the key. It tells you this penny came from the Denver Mint. Check it carefully. If it looks doubled, shadowed, or slightly misplaced, don't ignore it. Next, examine the date. The 2003 should be crisp, but on error examples, doubling creates faint extra lines around the numbers. Then, look at Liberty. On some $1 million specimens, the letters show a ghostly second impression. Finally, consider the coin's weight. Ordinary 2003 pennies weigh about 2.5 grams. But some error coins were struck on older copper planchets weighing 3.1 grams. That tiny difference, barely noticeable in your hand, could be the difference between 1 cent and $1 million. Collectors recommend using a simple digital scale, a magnifying glass, and patience. Because the truth is, the next life-changing discovery won't be made in a museum. It will be made by someone at their kitchen table, looking at a coin they almost spent without a second thought. One man's pocket change became $1 million miracle. And it can happen again. So tonight, when you empty your pockets, don't just toss your pennies aside. Hold them up to the light. Look closely. That 2003 D Lincoln penny you dismiss as ordinary might just carry the secret that transforms your life forever. This exact penny could be sitting in your drawer right now, and it's worth over $1 million. This coin almost ended up in the trash, but when it resurfaced, it stunned the entire coin collecting world. A simple 1977 penny, the kind you've seen thousands of times, the kind that jingles in your pocket change without a second thought. But hidden among the ordinary are a few pieces so rare, so mysterious, they've commanded prices of up to $1.8 million. Yes, you heard that right, a single copper penny from 1977, no mint mark, no shine, nothing that screams treasure has become one of the most sought-after secrets, and American coinage collectors whisper about it. Dealers rush to examine every 1977 penny that passes through their hands. And everyday Americans are unknowingly holding on to what could be a life-changing discovery. The story begins in Philadelphia. The year was 1977. Inflation was climbing, gasoline was rising, and the average American never looked twice at the pennies in their pockets. Every Philadelphia minted coin carried no mint mark, a tradition that made them indistinguishable from each other. Or so people thought, but buried in those production runs, a few pennies slipped through the presses with tiny details that separated them from the rest. Mistakes invisible to the naked eye unless you knew exactly where to look, and when those mistakes surfaced, the value skyrocketed. Imagine it, a coin minted for 1 cent, suddenly worth hundreds of thousands, even over $1 million. The answer lies in the errors. Collectors discovered that some 1977 no-mint mark pennies had double dies, where the design was struck twice, leaving ghost-like impressions on the date or lettering. Others revealed striking off-centers, where Lincoln's portrait shifted awkwardly, making the coin look almost surreal. And then there are the condition miracles, coins preserved in flawless mint state, as though they were frozen in time. But here's where the story turns shocking. Point 1 such penny, crisp, flawless, untouched by circulation, crossed the auction block. At first, the bidding was modest. A few $1,000s. But then, whispers spread across the room. Specialists leaned in. Eyes widened. And the numbers began to climb. 10,000. 50,000. 100,000. And when the final gavel fell, the coin sold for a staggering sum that nobody in the room would ever forget. Some reports estimate its potential worth today as high as $1.8 million, but what happened next stunned the entire coin world, because after that sale, collectors everywhere began tearing through their change. They looked at every 1977 penny they could find. Dealers reported floods of rolls being dumped onto counters. People who had ignored their jars of coins for decades suddenly saw them as treasure chests, and with good reason. For each of those ordinary brown cents might hide an extraordinary future. One man in Ohio found his prize in the most unexpected way. Cleaning out his late father's desk, he discovered a small cigar box of coins. Inside, tucked between dusty wheat pennies and tarnished nickels, sat a glowing 1977 cent, no mint mark. At first glance, it looked like nothing. But under magnification, he noticed something chilling, a doubling on the word liberty so faint it could easily be missed. When he brought it to a dealer, the reaction was instant. The dealer froze, lifted his glasses, and whispered, "Do you know what you have here?" That penny would later be valued at over 6 figures. A single coin, left forgotten in a drawer, had become a family's inheritance. But here's the twist: most people who own these pennies don't even know it. They spend them, toss them, or let them sit untouched in jars, never realizing they could be sitting on a small fortune. Think about it. How many 1977 pennies have you spent in your lifetime? How many passed through your hands without a second glance? Any one of them could have been the miracle coin worth $1 million. A 1977 penny pulled from circulation with scratches, wear, and dullness is still valuable if it carries a rare error. But the holy grail, the ones that bring in those $1 million valuations, are the coins in pristine condition. Coins graded mint state 67 or higher by professional services like PCGS or NGC. Coins that look as though they were struck yesterday, despite being nearly 50 years old. But here's another cliffhanger most collectors don't know: some 1977 pennies weren't just struck wrong. They were struck on the wrong metal. A tiny handful escaped the mint, pressed onto foreign planchets, blanks meant for other countries' coins, giving them odd weights and colors. These are virtually impossible to spot without scales and testing. But when they are discovered, their values climb into astronomical territory. And yet, the most haunting part of this story is that nobody knows how many of these error coins are still out there. Some believe most have already been found. Others argue the opposite, that the majority remain buried in circulation, sitting quietly in forgotten piggy banks, hidden inside coffee cans, waiting to shock whoever uncovers them. Dealers whisper that the next $1 million 1977 penny could appear at any moment. At a flea market. In a child's coin collection. Even in the drawer of a gas station cashier. First, always check the date, 1977, with no mint mark under the date, meaning it came from the Philadelphia Mint. Second, search for doubling. Look closely at Liberty, at In God We Trust, and at the numbers in the date. Any faint shadowing or doubled lines could mean you're holding a rare doubled die. A third, examine the strike. Off-center designs, partial collars, or misaligned lettering can signal a rare mint error. And finally, judge the condition. If your penny looks unusually sharp, with blazing luster and no scratches, it could be the one collectors dream about. Most people overlook these details. They see just another penny. But the trained eye sees possibility. The trained eye sees wealth, and as history has proven, the right 1977 no-mint mark penny can turn a single cent into $1 million miracle. So tonight, when you empty your pockets, pause before tossing those coins aside. Look closely. Inspect carefully. For the treasure of a lifetime may be hiding in plain sight. This exact penny could be sitting in your drawer right now, and it's worth over $1 million. This coin almost slipped through history unnoticed, a simple penny, minted in 1974, that could have ended up lost in a couch cushion, tossed in a jar, or even swept into the trash. But when one of these rare survivors was discovered, collectors realized it wasn't just a penny. It was a fortune. A life-changing treasure disguised as ordinary change. And today, it could be hiding in your pocket. At first glance, it looks just like every other copper coin struck that year. Abraham Lincoln's familiar profile, the date 1974 stamped clearly beneath his chin, and nothing more. No mint mark. Nothing that screams special. Nothing that tells you this is a penny worth up to $1.9 million. But the truth is, this tiny detail, the absence of a mint mark, is exactly what turned this coin into one of the most sought-after prizes in American numismatics. But how did a penny from 1974, a year most collectors never paid attention to, become a multi-million-dollar phenomenon? The story begins with a dramatic shift in U.S. coinage. In the early 1970s, the United States Mint faced a problem. Rising copper prices meant the penny was costing more to make than its face value. And in 1974, the mint began experimenting with new metals. For a short time, aluminum pennies were struck in secret only to be recalled and destroyed. Yet some escaped into the hands of congressmen, collectors, and even doctors who were given samples. Those aluminum pennies became legendary. But hidden behind that headline, the ordinary copper 1974 penny held a secret of its own. Collectors soon noticed that some 1974 pennies had no mint mark. Unlike the coins from Denver and San Francisco, these no-mark pennies came from Philadelphia, and some carried microscopic errors, odd striking qualities, and mysterious origins. Rumors spread. Could these be the rare survivors tied to the mint's experiments? Were they test strikes that slipped out? Nobody knew for certain. But one thing became clear: the right 1974 no-mint mark penny could sell for staggering amounts at auction, and then it happened. A collector, digging through an old roll of pennies, spotted one that seemed different. Sharper detail. A strange strike. No mint mark. At first, he thought little of it. After all, millions were made. But when he brought it to a dealer, the truth stunned the room. Under magnification, they realized this wasn't just any 1974 penny. It was one of the ultra-rare varieties, the kind that would command headlines and leave bidders fighting with raised paddles in an auction hall. That coin would go on to be valued at nearly $2 million, but what happened next shocked the coin world. More collectors began tearing through their jars, boxes, and bags of pennies. Suddenly, the humble 1974 no-mint mark Lincoln cent was the obsession of an entire community. Coin shops were flooded with hopeful collectors. Dealers were desperate to get their hands on one. And auction houses, they were ready to pay record-breaking sums. Because this coin wasn't just a mistake. It was history frozen in copper. A tangible reminder of the mint's secret experiments, the rising cost of metals, and a moment when America's smallest coin nearly disappeared. And that backstory, combined with the mystery of its rarity, sent its value skyrocketing into the millions. Think about it. A coin you could have spent on a gumball in 1974 is now worth more than a luxury home. More than most people's retirement savings. More than some people earn in a lifetime. All hidden in plain sight, waiting for the right collector to notice. But here's the twist. Most people miss the details that matter. They see the date, they see Lincoln's face, and they toss the coin back into circulation. But the tiny clues, the way the edges are struck, the subtle difference in luster, the crispness of the design, the missing mint mark, that's what separates a penny worth 1 cent from a penny worth nearly $2 million, and yet, there's an even bigger surprise. Some of these 1974 no mint mark pennies are still out there. Sitting quietly in coffee cans, resting in old piggy banks, trapped inside rolls of change that haven't been opened in decades. Every day, people spend them without knowing. Every day, someone lets a fortune slip through their fingers. Collectors were shocked when one example surfaced at auction and the bids soared past $1 million. The room went silent. All eyes locked on the little coin in its plastic holder. Hands went up, numbers shouted out, the price climbing higher and higher. And then, with the crack of a gavel, it was sold. A penny, sold for what some people never see in a lifetime. That single sale changed everything. It proved these weren't myths. It proved that the ordinary penny in your change could, in fact, be $1 million miracle, but the mystery deepens. Why are some 1974 no mint mark pennies worth so much more than others? The answer lies in condition and rarity. Collectors crave perfection. They want sharp strikes, flawless surfaces, and coins untouched by circulation. A penny that has survived 50 years without a single scratch can ignite a bidding war. And when combined with the no mint mark rarity, that's when the $1 million miracles are born. Now picture this. A man sitting at his kitchen table, sifting through a jar of coins he inherited from his father. He's done it before, never expecting much. But this time, one coin catches his eye. No mint mark. A little different, somehow. He brings it to a shop, and learns it's worth hundreds of thousands. Maybe even more. In an instant, his life changes forever. His father's jar of coins becomes a treasure chest. And all because of one penny. A 1974 no mint mark Lincoln cent. This isn't just a story about money. It's a story about discovery. About the thrill of finding history in your hands. About the dream that drives collectors to check every pocket, every drawer, every handful of change. Because the truth is, this exact penny could be anywhere. It could be sitting in your car, hiding in a desk, or lying forgotten in a dusty coin roll, and the next person who finds one could walk away with up to $1.9 million. Look closely at your 1974 pennies. If there's no D for Denver, no S for San Francisco, you may be holding a Philadelphia issue. Now look deeper. Is the strike sharp? Does the coin have unusual luster? Are there signs of doubling in the letters or date? Is the condition close to flawless? These are the details that dealers and auction houses will pay for. But beware, most 1974 pennies are common. Only a tiny fraction carry the traits that make them extraordinary, and that's what makes the hunt so thrilling. The odds are against you, but the payoff is life-changing. The difference between pocket change and $1 million miracle comes down to a detail most people overlook. Every day, collectors are chasing this dream. Every day, someone takes one last look at a penny before spending it. And sometimes, that hesitation is the difference between a cent and a fortune, because this exact penny could be sitting in your drawer right now, and it's worth over $1 million.